we begin and conclude today the 13th letter. This letter will give us an indication of two different types of personalities. Based on the verse from Tehillim, from Psalms, in chapter 31, verse 20, it says, how abundant is your goodness, God's goodness, which you have hidden away for those who fear you, which those who have wrought those for those that trust in you before man. So two types of people here. Those that things are hidden away, and things that are revealed. Another type of personality that's revealed. So, what does that mean? As we've learned in the past, everything in the physical world is an evolution or a devolution from the spiritual realm. So we all come from a spiritual source, of course, a divine source above. And in that, there's two basic levels or two basic designs, the right and the left. That's why we have right and left. And that's probably why everything is, there's a, in things there's a duality. There's up, down, right? Breathe in, breathe out. So many things that bring out the idea of right and left. So right is chesed, kindness. Left is gevura, strength, refrain, holding back. So we begin with the left side. What does it mean that if your soul is rooted in the divine source on the left? Again, figure of speech, of course. There's no right or left up there. But that's how we can understand things, because everything devolves into here. And we do have a right and a left. So the left is characterized with contraction, concealment in one's divine service. So what does that mean? Well, it means like to walk covertly with God, meaning modesty. And modesty here doesn't mean modesty in dress, meaning modesty in behavior. Meaning quiet, a quiet kind of individual. Or as another verse speaks about, the secret places weeps my soul. In connecting to God, there is a sense of, again, weeping. That's of the left. That's a contraction. That's, whatever is causing it is not the issue right now of what's causing it. It's how you're responding. So to something of trouble, difficulty, it can create a contraction, or it doesn't have to be a difficulty. It's just about the kind of nature that we have, that we take things in a contracted, concealed way. That will express itself in being charitable, for example, not giving in a lavish way, giving exactly what you are obliged to do. It's sort of like the person that does everything at the right time in the right place. Everything is very by the book. All your time is allotted. Everything is very well organized. When you have a soul that is constrained and contracted, so okay, this half hour I'm spending doing this mitzvah. This 45 minutes I'm doing this thing. Everything is kind of ausgecheshbent, as we say in Yiddish, calculated. And because of the calculation, it means everything's done in in sort of compartmentalized ways, shall we say. There's not a bad. There's not bad. Is not bad at all. It's very good, as a matter of fact. We're not speaking about it in a negative way. Talking about in a positive way. That everything has its time, everything has its place, right? In fact, that you go to someone, my wife tells of a friend of hers that when she went to her sister who lives in Australia, so when it came and her sister wasn't there at that time, and it came she needed something, she knew exactly where to find it because it would be exactly like their mother did, and exactly that's where it was. This kind of well organized, everything is very clear, and this is derives from the left side. Right? By contrast, there's a characteristic of the right. The right is chesed. It's expensive. It's an expensive way to serve God. Not concealed, not contracted. You walk expensively with God without any kind of limitation, no restraint of spirit in whether it be in generosity, in charity, or in your study of Torah, or anything that you do. You do it in a grand way. We're not talking grand here in show-off way. No, we're talking about it in an appropriate, grand way. That's just your nature. Is everything is grand, right? You don't do just to fulfill your obligation, right? You go above and beyond. So if it's charitable, you do that. When you're engaged in your Torah study, so you are so fully, engaged in a grand way that there's no constraint, there's no limitation, there's no okay, time's up. I gotta get next obligation, next thing to do, next responsibility to take care of. Right, that's the left. The left is that sense of a greater sense of responsibility. Here it's more of the no restraint of spirit. That whatever you're engaged in is as if the only thing that exists. And therefore, can it run over? Yeah, it can run over the time that was allotted. Why? Because everything's done in a manner of grandeur. So which one's right? I'm sure you answered it already. They're both right. And we're talking about from a holy place. We're not talking about when you do these things, for grandeur, for to feel good, that everybody's gonna, give you a pat on the back, for your grand, party that you made. No. We're talking about from a holy place. They're both correct. And the truth is, as the Alter Rebbe says, we need to have both traits. In other words, a soul that derives from chesed, from the right side, and everything about them is grand. They need to incorporate the left side of Gura, that there has to be a time and place for everything. There needs to be a greater sense of doing out of obligation and doing it in a constricted manner. So likewise, a person who is a left personality, gvuradik, right, where everything is perfectly organized. You know what? It's wonderful to have order, but sometimes don't make order the law and order. Sometimes you have to go beyond that. Sometimes you are make sure you're in bed by 10 o'clock so that way you can get enough sleep so that in the following day you're going to have the strength to do everything that you need to do. Sometimes you have to break that, and you have to be expansive and stay up later because that's what's needed for whatever. I'm just giving that by way of example, right? In other words, whatever your character quality nature is, you need to incorporate the other side. As Our sages say there is no thing that has not its place. So there's a time for chesed, there's a time for gvura. There's a time for gvura and a time for chesed. And whatever your essential nature is, you need to incorporate the other. And we see this actually exemplified by the famous debate between the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai. The house of Hillel was an embodiment of the right of chesed, so they were more lenient in their rulings, and because that's the idea of embracing. And the house of Hillel, Shammai rather, the house of Shammai, they were more stringent because they came from the left. Yet we see sometimes that they actually didn't go according to what their natural disposition was. Sometimes they ruled the opposite. Exactly this idea. Because they are holy people, and in holiness there is no division, right? So there isn't, this is my way, this is my path, this is the way I am, and that's me. No, that's not holy. That's from an unholy side, right? That you cannot incorporate another quality. In holiness, you need to be able to have no division, and therefore, if you are a soul that comes from chesed above, well, you need to incorporate the gvura in your divine service, the trait that is not your natural instinct, because again, in holiness, things need to be mutually inclusive. There needs to be a union, and this is the union. This is called holiness, when you can have the opposite of what your nature is and incorporate it into your divine service. And we see this also with Abraham, Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was the embodiment of chesed, of kindness. His son, Yitzchak, was the embodiment of gvura, the opposite, right? However, being that he was the embodiment of divine kindness, is that all he was? No. As the story goes, when he took his son, his only son that he loved, Isaac, Yitzchak, and brought him as an offering on the altar, right? Or as God tested him to see his devotion, right? It was only a test. It was not the plan to bring him as an offering. He understood it from his words, which were not what he actually had planned for him to do. But then, when he did bring his son, and acting in a way of gvura, that wasn't loving kindness to bring your son as an offering. That's an act of gvura, of power, of self-restraint. And he did that. That's when God says, now I know that you are God-fearing. Now I know that you truly are a servant of God. Why? Because he did something that's the opposite of his nature. His nature would never bring him to bring his son as an offering. It's only because this is what God needs from him. God, commanded of him. And therefore, he was able to incorporate another quality that's not his natural instinct of gvura, self-restraint, of power, to act in this severe way to bring him. So now, so what do we see? We see that Avraham also incorporated gvura. What is the difference between his chesed and his gvura? So his chesed, his loving kindness, was, so to speak, front burner, and the gvura was back burner. That whenever he needs to incorporate something, that it takes not his natural instinctual manner of being, he was able to access it. In other words, it wasn't the daily routine or the daily way that he served God was through gvura. No, it was through chesed, it was through loving kindness. The opposite is by Yitzchak. His natural way was much more, like we spoke, the souls from the left, and everything is very prioritized. Everything is very, categorized and put into its proper place and time, and so on. Yet, Yitzchak, Isaac, in the back burner, having access to was his chesed, that if any time he needs it, right, that he would be able to manifest it, reveal it, incorporate it in his divine service. Now, getting back to our verse, this is what King David said in Tehillim in Psalms, that the person who's got the attribute of Gvura, they're a soul that comes from the left, right? What does the verse say? How abundant is your goodness for those who have hidden away, meaning those who walk covertly, those who are constrained, contracted, right, in their divine service. That's of the left. And yet, how abundant is your goodness? In other words, the chesed is also there, but in a state of concealment. It's hidden, right? It's hidden, like Beis Shammai, as we said, that the hidden goodness was hidden beneath the dominant attribute of Gevurah, or like in Avram Avinu, like Abraham. It was there. It was hidden below. But yet, and this is the interesting thing here, is the verse says, how abundant is that goodness? Meaning, it is hidden, but it's not a small measure. It is abundant. It is abundant. Latent, but abundant. In other words, just as the souls that come from the right, their kindness is abundant in a revealed open way. Those souls that come from the left, again, we're talking about those, who actualize it in their divine service, right? They have the same abundant goodness, kindness in their soul, those that come from the left, right? Again, like the house of Shammai, their souls coming from the left have abundant kindness in their soul, that any time that they need to access it, they can do kindness without measure. Without measure. An expansive way, not in a limited way. So meaning, when it comes to being charitable, even those who are, very careful to make sure that they take their 10%, they get their paycheck, right away they take off 10% or to 20% of the money, they put it aside, to make sure that that money shall be spent and so on. So they're very, very precise, which is wonderful. But at the same time, they can also be expensive, all right, because that expensive kindness is also part of their neshama that is back burner. It's hidden, but they can reveal it, express it at any time, and in an equal manner that the person who has it more by nature can reveal it. And these are, the two kinds of kindnesses that we spoke about previously, that there is chesed v'is there is this kind of kindness that is a limited one, and a kindness that is unlimited. The kindness that's limited is one that there can be negative forces that don't allow that kindness to be manifest and express itself down here. But then there is a Rav Chesed, the limitless form of kindness, that there's nothing that will deter, nothing that will be an obstacle, and that will reveal the abundance of the soul, because it comes from a lofty place, from Seviv Kolamim, from a place that is able to encompass and be a powerful force of giving in a limitless way. And this is an access that all of our souls have, even if we come from the left side. We have access to it through our divine service that we can give in such measure, in such a manner. Whew. Okay. Very interesting. There's a lot. Any questions? Okay. Anna. Okay. We're going to first stick to questions that are related to the topic, and then we can see if we have time. We can. How do we truly know which attributes we have? I feel a mixture and not a dominant left or right. I hear you. Could be. I think the take home over here is whatever our nature is, right, left, center, a little off right, a little off left, right? There's no political statements being made here. Whatever it is, I think the important thing is to appreciate that we need to incorporate the opposite. So whatever it is in our lives that we're going through that day, right? Maybe some days we feel more right and sometimes more left. Sometimes we feel more, we're just out there. Sometimes we feel like much more closed. So, yeah, good question. Okay. Okay. Anybody? Wilma, you wanted to say something, or Michael? You're cutting up. You're cutting up.
I have. Do you hear me now?
Yeah.
Now? Look that we have to strengthen the weaker side. Have we then to look in the reason why we work more more when we look at that we can sit and then strengthen this like that. That one side comes Hashem and one side comes more out of the fear from Hashem. Is there?
Oh, that's right and left. One is chesed, one's more love, one's more, respect slash fear slash awe. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Jay, limiting kindness to our group only creates divisions in society. I don't know what that means, Jay. I don't know if you're responding to something. So, which attribute you really have? That's a really good question. I sometimes, like I see, as Davida, I think you mentioned, I see two qualities in me. And that seem to be opposite. I don't know, by nature, in other words. So it's a good question. The Rebbe said about himself that he was definitely more Gvuradik, left side, and more of and you see how there was precision there. The previous Rebbe was more right side, Chesed. Again, one is not right and one is not wrong. They're both right. They're both what we've been given. But in order to truly serve God is to incorporate the other in the appropriate way. And isn't it all about balance of our personality, no extremes in it? Yeah, you're right. That's about a balance. Yeah, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Alice has a question. Recognize we are who we are and know we can access the other side. How do we use the concept in everyday life? Well, very good question, Alice. How do we incorporate this in everyday life? So, if your response to something is because that's your natural inclination, so then question yourself. Maybe I shouldn't just follow my auto instinct. And maybe I need to think it through on how I can incorporate that which is not my natural instinct of a quality. So if I, naturally will embrace something, maybe let me hold back and think that, is, I'm embracing it because that's my natural character quality, is to embrace this thing, person, whatever it is, right? So I'm doing it out of, just not necessarily because that's the right thing to do. So I think maybe I shouldn't embrace, or maybe I should be much more what's the word? I'll give you an example. Yesterday I had someone who came to me who was going through very difficult struggle. And I, was caring and empathetic because, was something. But then I thought to myself, I don't think I'm doing a service to this person by just being empathetic. After all, I'm a rabbi, and the person came to me as a rabbi also. So, initially I was caring and empathetic, or expressed it with, empathy. But then I thought, my caring needs to incorporate something more. What is that more? I have to allow that person to realize what they're doing to themselves right now and how they are destroying themselves, literally destroying themselves. And I thought, so instinctually I didn't want to go there because it may, may not be accepted. It may not be the person's, maybe, I had to make a judgment if they're ready for it, right? So I did make that judgment. Felt that they were ready for it. Because they're not ready for it, so then that's not a good thing. So I felt that they would be ready for it. And then I incorporated the opposite of what my initial, engagement was. I incorporated something that was more Gvuradik, more, an assessment, right? Empathy isn't making, it was more about the assessment of the situation and to help this person recognize through what I assessed to allow the person maybe open up their eyes and deal with the situation in a healthier way. Now, we're actually worked out, I think, quite well. At least in the moment, it definitely, right? So, there's an example of where I just had to incorporate that. Okay, folks, I must end now. Ponder if our personal harmony of all there brings our world in harmony with the spiritual world. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, folks. Our conversation will continue, as always.
Thank you, Rabbi.
I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Such and Kadesh. Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you Tanya Rambam coming up. Come and join us. Have a wonderful, great day.